This week on Overdrive Radio, this edition for June 30th, 2023, for podcast subscribers and going live at the world-famous overdriveonline.com on Monday, July 3rd, we've got June Trucker of the Month, Debbie Desiderato, in conversation with our own Overdrive news editor, Matt Cole. Cole's story about Desiderato's long trucking career is live now at the website, and today we'll hear parts of that in Desiderato's own words. She's built considerable value with the do-it-yourself approach to business throughout her well more than 2 decades as an independent owner-operator. I'm Todd Dills, and if Debbie's name sounds familiar, that's because she's been here on the podcast before. Likewise, in our co-production with PRX's Radiotopia network of the Over the Road series, which originally aired in 2020. Active with the Make-A-Wish Foundation's Mother's Day convoy events, the Real Women in Trucking group, and more, too, she's made a name for herself as an independent, not afraid to tell it like it is, and to give back in the form of advice for those coming up. Tools and business processes she's built for herself through the years, she readily shares with others as a familiar face at truck shows around the nation, online, and elsewhere. As an example, take her 2018 launch of a mapping application for smartphones geared to help haulers store location information for themselves. She built the program herself and made it available free for anyone. It's simple, useful, and comes with an apt name, Trucker Notes. Her designation as Trucker of the Month for June, though, is as much a testament to her perseverance through the tumult of the last 2 decades as an independent with authority. She attributes a lot of her success to that do-it-yourself spirit, particularly in the mechanical realm.
Things like that can, that could potentially put me in a shop for weeks. I can take care of stuff like that once I diagnose it.
Her growth as owner through the years hasn't always been easy, though, as she described the early years learning by trial and error that, depending on the destination, sometimes you got to take that backhaul with you in the headhaul rate, as it were.
Not knowing, the little things that you should know, like don't go to Denver or don't go to Seattle. When you don't know that and you go there and you sit for a week and you can't get out of there, it's a hard lesson. There's really no book on this,
Mm-hmm. You can call me crazy, but I sense another new title in Debbie Desiderato's future. On the other side of a break, we'll drop right in with owner-operator, mechanic, salesperson, app developer, Overdrive June Trucker of the Month, and, I'll say, author Debbie Desiderato, writing the book on trucking as an independent. Keep tuned.
Every diesel needs to defend against clogged injectors, low lubricity, and slipping fuel economy. The best defense is the best defender. House Diesel Defender with advanced IDX4 detergent. Get a deeper clean, maximum lubricity, and boosted fuel economy. Guaranteed. House Diesel Defender. Get optimal performance. House. For every diesel.
You can find more information about Howe's Diesel Defender at HOWESHouseproducts.com. Here's Debbie Desiderato taking us down under, back to her beginnings in Australia.
Well, I was born and raised in Australia, and I didn't know a thing about trucks growing up until my mother sent me to New Zealand to spend a little vacation with my older brother, who was a truck driver in New Zealand, and went out on the road with him over there, and that's pretty much where I got the trucking bug. I knew exactly, when I was 13 years old, I'm going to be a truck driver. I just knew it, I thought it was the coolest thing, riding around in a truck, So, that's where the interest began. And I was, when I grew up in Australia, I became a what we call a postie. That's a letter carrier.
Okay.
In Australia, and they deliver mail by motorcycle over there. So, and that was another interest I had, was, motorcycles. So I thought I had a pretty steady job with the post office, and a couple of years after, they sold out to private contractors. So I got a contract with the post office, and it just kind of went downhill. It wasn't good money anymore. So I had pen pals in New York, because that was well before computers came out. So I'd been writing to these people in New York, and they convinced me to come over for a vacation. So in 1994, I think it was, I came over for a vacation and absolutely fell in love with the place. I mean, all I saw was New York, but just loved everything about it. And I still remember diesel fuel was 99 cents a gallon. So, yeah, I went home and pretty much packed up, sold all my stuff, cashed in my 401k, and said, screw it, I'm moving to America. And
Wow.
so I did. That was, I think, 96 when I came back.
Okay,
Yeah, it was 94.
gotcha.
I came for a vacation. Yeah, 2 years later, I had everything sold and cashed in and moved over here and stayed with my friends in New York. And they hooked me up with a job. My first job over here was driving a wrecker for $5 an hour. Yeah, it was pretty rough. But, you know, $5 an hour was not that bad back then. I mean, I could survive on it. It wasn't great. But did that for a couple of years, learned a lot, and didn't know where I was going. Like, the boss threw me the keys of the truck and a map and said, good luck, you know. So I was driving around the streets of New York City. I could barely stay on the right side of the road. So, because I was used to driving on the other side, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, but that was fun. And from there, I think 1999 or 98, I met my husband. No, sorry, 96, I met him. 98, we got married. In 1999, I moved to a car hauling company on Long Island. They were the biggest in the Northeast at the time, and they had 42 trucks. Doesn't sound very big, but they pretty much had the Northeast wrapped up. So they took a chance on me and pretty much let me do whatever I want at that company. I became the DOT safety manager. And like I handled the audits. We used to get a lot of audits. That's a bad sign, I know. So I would handle the audits, and then I was driving trucks for them, car haulers. And you know, when you come from another country, like you have to get your license all over again. I think my international license was good for 1 year, but I had to start from scratch again, get my car license, my motorcycle license, and then I got my CDL A through that car hauling company, and they were kind enough to let me use one of their trucks, and I just taught myself. And, you know, they would give me a truck I would take home at night. I would just drive the truck to my house and then back to work the next day, crashing gears and trying to figure it out, you know. Next thing you know, I'm going for a road test and I've got a Class A license. So that was kind of a weird way to start trucking. Well, before I got the Class A, I was driving Class B vehicles for them. So then I think it was 2003, I went out and got my own authority because the car hauling company, it was past its prime and it was kind of going downhill. The owner, he was the old guy, and I could kind of see where it was going. And I learned a whole lot with that company. I learned enough to go out on my own and, you know, get customers and stuff. So, yeah, I got my authority in 2003. I was car hauling all over the country. I went for the best customers. I got Jaguar, Porsche, and Mercedes.
Oh, wow.
And I started out just in the New York tri-state area. And by referrals, next thing you know, I'm like branching out further and further. And, you know, I'm out in Colorado, I'm in California, and I was just one truck and too many customers. I made a ton of money. I made so much money I couldn't count it. but I also couldn't stay awake, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I leased on a driver, which I never wanted to do. I never wanted to grow because kind of just, you know, like being small and independent and only having to worry about myself. So I did lease on a driver, and just as I expected, he let me down and made me look bad in front of customers, and I didn't like that. So I said, well, I'm not doing that again.
Right.
So, yeah, I did that car hauling until about 2008 or something. And I used to do a lot of DOT audits for my friends that had small trucking companies as well. So I was kind of in and out of Long Island, trying to run a truck, trying to do audits for my friends, and you know, trying to keep it together. And I really burned out, you know. So I think it was 2010. I decided I need to, I need to work smarter, not harder. You know, car hauling's a lot of work. It's good money, but it's a lot of work, physical work. So I said, I'm going to buy just a regular over-the-road sleeper tractor and a dry van and see how that goes. And I did, and pretty much stuck with it. I realized, it's a lot easier on your body, and you can make just as good of money if you do it right. So pretty much been pulling dry vans since then. I've done a few other things in between. I usually run FEMA freight when there's hurricanes. I've pulled water tankers and MREs, and then I got with the United States government's biggest contractor, and I subcontracted for them, pulling MREs out of Norfolk, Virginia, the naval base, and taking those to a bunch of other military bases around the East Coast. Yeah. So I've kind of found you've got to find your niche in dry van, because that broker board freight is just terrible. Fast forward a little bit. When I was doing MREs when the pandemic hit us, and everything just came to a screeching halt, and I ended up parking the truck. I said, well, I'm just going to take a little bit of time off and see what happens here. And I couldn't get any more military freight. Nothing was moving. And I said, well, I need to do something. So I bought a hot shot and took off and did some machinery and vehicles and stuff, running all over the place.
Regular readers will recall I told that story of Debbie Desiderato's return to car hauling of a fashion in 2020, a piece of a larger series on hotshot hauling called Hotshot as Downsized Pandemic Refuge. I'll post a link to it in the show notes and the post that houses this podcast as well when it goes live at overdriveonline.com July 3rd, 2023. Suffice it to say, that run didn't last all that long, though did prove to be a refuge for at least a short time.
It was fun, but there wasn't enough money in it, But anyway, the freight came back again, and then I moved. I bought a house down in Virginia, which was something I'd been wanting to do for a long time. I found a nice little property, bought a house down there, and my husband didn't want to move there. He was born and raised in New York. He was a New Yorker. And I said, well, I'm going to have a little, part-time hideaway in the mountains. So I bought that place, and then I met my neighbors everybody around that area is into logging. That's pretty much the only thing to do in the mountains is logging. So next thing you know, I'm pulling a log trailer. So I'm half, doing van freight. I'm doing logging on the side. and I got rid of that hot shot. That didn't work out very good for me. But yeah, I'm just back to van freight and then doing logging when I'm at home. That's pretty much where I'm at today.
When you went out on your own authority in 2003, you said, was Walkabout Transport, was that the name of your company from the get-go there?
No, I was Classic Auto Transport.
Okay.
Classic Auto Transport. Yeah, I've kept the same DOT number and MC number all these years. All I did when I came back out in the dry van, I just changed the name to Walkabout.
Okay.
Because I wasn't auto transport anymore. I figured just Walkabout Transport, that covers whatever kind of freight I'm doing.
Are you still pretty much hauling all over the country, or are there any specific lanes you like to stick to?
I just go wherever my customer sends me. She has customers in Mobile, Alabama. Right now I'm coming back from, where was I? O'Fallon, Missouri. She has sent me to Portland, Oregon in the winter, just wherever her customers are. And matter of fact, she said to me, if I had a flatbed, she could give me more work. And I said, well, okay, I can get a flatbed. So I bought a flatbed, and then I said to myself, I don't really want more work. Like, I'm comfortably busy right now. Now, I've paid off my truck, I've paid off the house. My expenses are extremely, extremely low because, I live in the mountains and my insurance is less than $5,000 a year, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow.
That $4,850 a year, which is incredibly low. And that's through NASDAQ. I think it's, it's to do with how long you've had your authority and, your MVR and all that stuff. And I'm spotless, DOT and license and everything is spotless. So, you can really get it down that low. It's possible. So, yeah, my expenses are really low, so I don't need to work. I don't need to do 100,000 miles a year. I reckon I work maybe 25 weeks a year.
Okay.
Pretty much a week on, a week at home. Sometimes a week on, 2 weeks at home. But during that 2 weeks, I might, do some logging locally, and that's cash money. So I like that. I bought a flatbed, which I'm in the middle of pretty much rebuilding the whole thing. And I think that was just a waste of time because I don't want more work. She keeps me comfortably busy. They make a product for, I don't want to give away too much details. Well, it's a product that goes inside of pipes, like underground pipes. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's felt. And felt is 80% air. So I'm hauling 80% air.
Yeah, really light loads, I imagine.
Yes, they are very light, very easy. They're on like really big pallets, like 15-foot long pallets.
Okay.
So I get 2 to 3 pallets, and that's it. And it weighs like 5,000 pounds.
Wow.
And, I got a 600 horsepower engine. It's like I'm hauling nothing, But then on the other side of the spectrum, when I'm hauling logs, I'm 100,000 pounds, so I need the horsepower.
Yeah, for sure.
For the logging. Yeah.
Are you still in the 2017 Western Star?
Yep.
Okay.
I love this truck. This has been an awesome truck. Gives me very few problems. It's a DD16 Detroit.
Okay.
600 ponies. I bought this truck I think I bought it 2021. Yeah, I did, March of 2021.
Okay. And then the Transfix thing was in like September of that year.
Yeah, it was not long after I bought the truck. Yeah.
Regular Overdrive readers and listeners will recall what Cole and Desiderato are making reference to there. A custom interior renovation the owner-operator won for that 2017 Western Star as part of the Transfix digital brokerage's Transfix My Rig sweepstakes, conducted by secret celebrity renovation star Jason Cameron. Find the details in the September 24th, 2021 edition of Overdrive Radio. I'll post a link to that podcast in the show notes too, and you can find it via the world famous overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio as well. Cults Talk with a turn then to business matters, bookkeeping and the like, where Desiderato strives for bedrock simplicity where she can, even with all the quick shifts she's made throughout recent years in search of stability and profits.
I keep it simple. That's why I don't have, I've never wanted to grow because I've never wanted to be responsible for somebody else's, paycheck.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just keep it simple. I do pretty much everything myself. I'm a real do-it-yourselfer. Like, I do my own road taxes and, my permits and stuff. I do everything I can myself. I do a lot of repairs, oil changes and all that stuff. Matter of fact, I just, what was it? Oh, the oil pressure switch went out on me a couple of weeks ago. Driving down the road at 65 and the truck just cuts off.
Oh,
Just
no.
completely cuts off. I got no brakes, no steering, no nothing. I managed to get over to the shoulder, and I had no idea. This truck doesn't tell me, what's wrong with it. Like, just the stupid idiot light will come on. Check engine. So I'm like, okay, I get out, I check the engine. It's there. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Well, I happen to have a PhD in Google.
There you go.
I figured it out. It was the oil pressure sensor. So yeah, I took care of that. Things like that can, that could potentially put me in a shop for weeks. I can take care of stuff like that once I diagnose it.
Mhm.
I don't mind getting my hands dirty, And my neighbor's a welder, and he helps me a lot with other stuff that I can't do myself. Recently just had to change airbags and shocks and stuff all around. So yeah, I try to stay out of the shop as much as I can. I'll buy the parts and order a lot of stuff online. I order stuff I don't need just so I got it.
Mhm.
And things are going to go out eventually, like starters and alternators and stuff. And keep them in my garage at home or keep them in the truck with me. And I think I saved a lot of money. My first couple of years trucking, I remember one year spending $30,000 on repairs, and I said, that's just ridiculous. That has to stop,
Right.
And I know people spend, way more than that on repairs, but that's not okay with me, I'm not okay with that. So yeah, I try to do everything I can myself. And I have you call it invoicing software program on my phone that I keep updated, and it tracks my invoices. And when I got to bill somebody, I can email an invoice right from the program.
Which
And
program is it that you use?
it's Invoice Simple.
Okay.
And it costs me like $5 a month. Oh, I think it just went up, but I'm grandfathered in. I think it's like $20 a month now or something. But they didn't raise mine because I've been with them pretty much since the beginning.
Mhm.
And it'll keep track, and it'll tell me if something's approaching 30 days. Whereas I don't have a problem getting paid. Like I have no written off debt. Nobody that's not paid me, and I have had to file on surety bonds in the past.
Mhm.
And now, I know it's pretty much just a phone call to the surety bond company, and then I get paid. It doesn't go any further. I don't have to actually file a claim.
Mhm.
The surety bond company will call the broker and say, hey, next thing you know, I'm getting paid. So Yeah, I keep track of that. Keeping control of expenses and, doing as much as I can myself, which is pretty much everything. I mean, if I had to change a turbo or something, I could do it. If I had to, take the motor apart, I couldn't do that. But, I could do a lot of repairs and stuff myself.
Where'd you pick up that mechanical ability, that knowledge?
That just comes from being Australia. Comes from being Australian. It's like we're born with it, I guess because the roads out there are really remote, and you don't have a truck stop at every other exit like you do here. You might go a day and a half without seeing another person or a gas station or anything on the road in Australia. So it's kind of a born resourcefulness that we have. It's kind of weird. I remember when I was a kid, my mum, the car broke down. I think it broke a fan belt, and she used her pantyhose to make a fan belt.
Oh, wow.
And just tied in a knot, and it worked. We made it, whatever, the next 100 miles or something.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just what you got to do out there. Otherwise, the Aborigines will get you, or the snakes or something. And if they don't get you, the sun will. It'll
right.
Yeah. But yeah, trucking so much more convenient over here. Showers every other exit. Restaurants, well, there used to be restaurants open all night, but since the pandemic, that's changed. But it's a lot more convenient here.
Being a one truck owner operator and being able to get in directly with shippers, how did you approach that? That
was not easy, I tell you. This customer I have right now, which I don't need anybody else because I got that company. And this, I can only be in, one place at a time. So, I called them up one day and I knew they were there they're right in my neighborhood. And I called them up one day and it must have took me 3 days to build up the nerve to even make the phone call. Like, I'm not a salesperson. I don't like sales. And I think, a lot of truckers struggle with this. So I called them up one day and I got through to a decision maker, but she didn't want to hear me out. And she tried to hang up the phone. I said, just hear me out 1 second. I said, I live right in your neighborhood. I go all over the country. Use me as a backup. That's all when you get stuck. And that got her attention. So she said, all right, send me your, insurance and stuff. Here's my email. And, she was not happy that I got through, right? And I mean, they get a million of these phone calls a day from brokers and stuff. And I know I get spam calls all day long and I hate them. So I sent her, my authority and my insurance and stuff. Well, the insurance Accord certificate that I sent, it was kind of blurry. She emails me back and she said, could you send me a clearer copy? I said, I'm 5 minutes away. How about I just walk it into you? She said, okay. So that was my chance. I got my foot in the door. So I made a nice little folder with a clear copy of my insurance, my authority, and my W-9, and, put on a clean walkabout T-shirt and went in there and introduced myself. Well, that was all it took. I was off and running from that day on. I think I had a load the next day. And I serviced the hell out of them. Like, they know that I'm only 5 minutes away and, they can call me last minute, but they don't anymore. They give me like a week's notice. Matter of fact, sometimes I'll pick up a load from them. I'll just get going start headed to, I don't know, Alabama, and they'll say, when can you get back and grab this next one? So it's like they barely giving me enough time to, find another load and get back now. But it's all good. And that was difficult for me to do that because, I'm not a salesperson. I'd called a few companies in the past, and I got one guy who's also in the neighborhood that manufactures plastic. I like lightweight stuff. And he was negotiating with me on the phone about pricing, and he was trying to get me at, rock bottom prices. And I said, no, I don't need your business that bad, So nothing ever came of that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple of brokers also that I can call upon that I've worked with several times a year, and they remember me. And ones that, pay me fast. I take notes. I created an app. I don't know if you know about it, Trucker Notes, several years ago. And I put notes in there about shippers, where I pick up from and where I deliver. Right. It's just, it's my own notes, so that if I'm back in this area and I need a load out, I can, call this broker that I've done loads out of there before. Because it gets hard to remember everything when you're running all over the country,
Definitely. Yeah.
So, so that helps a lot. I don't, it doesn't always work. I don't always get a load, where I need to go. But it sure is easier nowadays than it used to be. And I don't know if it's because I got older and I'm not, out there like busting my ass anymore. I don't know if it's that. If it's because the truck's paid off, the house is paid off, and, I don't really have to make a whole lot of money. But I know it's a lot easier. Trucking seems to be a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's I don't give much of a shit anymore. Yep. And it wasn't always. I mean, I remember just barely making truck payments. This is the fourth 18-wheeler I've owned. And I remember, my first and second trucks scrambling to try to, make ends meet, and not knowing, the little things that you should know, like don't go to Denver or don't go to Seattle. When you don't know that and you go there and you sit for a week and you can't get out of there and you end up taking some cheap shit just to get you out, it's a hard lesson. There's really no book on this,
Mm-hmm.
But the things you learn along the way, makes you a smarter truck driver. Where not to go, or, what do they say? Take your backhaul with you when you go to Denver.
Right.
All those little things you learn along the way, and it gets easier after years of doing it, I guess.
Here's a big thanks to the owner-operator for her time and for her story. I wanted to note our sincere condolences on the loss of her husband in January of this year. I know 2022 was a tough one for her in ways much more difficult than any cost inflation, that's sure. Our condolences, Debbie, again. And congrats on the Trucker of the Month nod, of course. That puts Desiderato in the running for Overdrive's 2023 Trucker of the Year award. There's still time for all of you to nominate a deserving owner of up to 3 trucks, or enter yourself. You can do that via the nomination form at overdriveonline.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes too, wherever you're listening. And if you haven't, leave Overdrive a rating or review there. No doubt it helps other interested owners find the podcast. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer, who you'll hear from next week. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Whammick. Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own news editor Matt Cole, who we also heard from today, social media coordinator Holly Young, executive editor Alex Lockey, and video editors Lawson Rudisil and Andrew Gwynn. That's all for today. See you next time.